And I thought, oh, we've got this wrong. We've really, really got this wrong.
Are you going to bring your Olympic medals along with you? And he said, yes, why? And I was like, would you mind if we stole them?
Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Event Effect. Today I'm joined by Vanessa Lovatt, Global Director of Customer Engagement at Notify, and Simon Howard, Founder and Director of Introducing Events. I'm looking very much forward today to talk about event experience and engagement. And to get started, Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit more of how you got started in the event industry?
Yes, I can. And firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. It's really great to be joining you on this podcast and to see Simon again too. And when I thought about this, I realised that the first event that I really got involved in was when I was 16 years old, which was a charity fashion show, which is probably not what you were expecting me to say, but it definitely gave me a taste for it, that kind of buzz that you get when something really comes together. But my first event job was in 2005, and it was running commercial conferences. So all business to business stuff, and very much focused on researching the programs and then briefing the project teams around them. So the sales guys on how to sell them and the marketing team on how to market those events. And it was awesome. It was a real experience quite soon after my university days. And that's what got me the hunger for the event sector, I guess. And it's been really hard to look back, I think, since then, although that is a long time ago now.
I think we can all relate to not wanting to look back in that sense.
Yeah.
Simon, how did you actually got started in the event industry?
Well, like many people I've worked with over the years, I kind of sort of fell into it, which a lot of people seem to do. You know, you start, you get a taste for it, a bit like Vanessa said, and then you experience the joy of it. So straight out of uni, I graduated with a degree in information management, which is like business IT. Didn't really know where I wanted to take that or what sort of career I wanted. So I got one of the best graduate management schemes in the UK at the time, which was actually for Gala Bingo, one of the biggest bingo companies in the UK, which gave me my first punch on, put me on stage. There's some people, entertain them, call the numbers, manage the team. And that was where, at the age of 21, I had the responsibility of organising my first event for over 400 people. We got different clubs coming in. We had to organise the transport, the food. And that was my first opportunity to take what was a fairly standard format for the industry and actually put a bit more fun into it. So we created unique games, we gave it a theme, and just make it a little bit more of an experience. So that was my first taste. And then I did that for sort of 3 or 4 years, decided bingo maybe wasn't the career for me. So I retrained in project management. But while I was retraining, the sort of 2008, 2009 recession hit. There were no jobs. So I decided to try and get a bit of experience, found a local event management company. They very quickly realized that I could host things. I was, confident, funny, out there. So I went full time with them and as an event manager. And that's when I got into full time corporate events, conferences, team building, interactive evening entertainment. And basically about 7 years ago, I became freelance. And then this year, I've launched my own event management company. And we deliver experiences for people all over the UK in person and all over the world virtually as well.
Awesome. So good to hear kind of the background story of how we all more or less tumbled into this industry. But it felt so good and we never looked back. I really love that. Since then, obviously, since the beginning, a lot has happened. And I was curious to hear from your point of view, what are the trends or what is the current state of events and more specifically event engagement and experience? Vanessa, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So very much thinking about the business event world, because that's certainly my wheelhouse. And Simon, I love that you came from such a different background as well, because I think it firstly means that we probably have very different experiences to share. But what I love about it is that you're now in the corporate event sector, and the reality is that everybody coming to these events are human beings. And it doesn't matter what the content of the event is, you are still trying to engage human beings. And the reason I say that sounds very obvious is because I think this is a really important piece that needs to be considered when it comes to current trends. Because people have changed their perspectives significantly over the last 2.5 years. And I'm not going to say the P word, we all know why, but perceptions of what is good and bad have changed quite a little bit. I think there's a lot less acceptance for mediocre than there used to be when joining events. But there's also a hugely increased appetite for humanity at any events that people go to, whether that's online or in person. And people just want to engage and interact with other people in a very easy manner. It doesn't always have to be formal. It doesn't always have to be corporate. And I think this is a trend that we need to really embrace right now across the whole sector. So my experiences in both in-person events and virtual events since 2012, which is quite a long time ago. And they were very, very average back then. I will be honest and say that they're a lot better now. But this concept of humanizing and bringing elements to your events that delight people during the experience are here. And I think we have this amazing opportunity to be quite experimental with the experiences that we're trying to create for people. And I think there's more appetite for that than there has ever been. So I feel quite excited about this moment in time that we have and this opportunity to be quite creative. And I've seen some amazing examples of this over even just the last 3 months, I would say, with both online and in-person events and those that cross over both, which we're probably going to come to in a minute. But Simon, does that sort of match your thoughts as well on that kind of bringing the human aspect to the events and the experiences we're trying to create?
No, absolutely. And just for sort of people's background over the past couple of years, I've been delivering, it's literally written above my head, virtual experiences as opposed to virtual events, because I very much, again, when the P word happened, I say we're not going to mention it, but we all know what happened, and people became restricted, they couldn't do things. A lot of people were putting on virtual events, and it was just something that you sort of had on in the background. Whereas very much as Vanessa's just said about humanizing it, we gave people a chance. We put the human back into virtual events. So the sort of activities and the entertainment we did, we made it all about the audience. I know a lot of event planners went into sort of this meltdown mode. We can't. And I just sat there and went, what can we do? What can we get these people to do? You're sat at home. I want you to be part of the event. I want you to experience things. I want you to get emotional, excitement, a bit of panic, that energy. And it was that the reason we had so much success over the past couple of years on the virtual stage is because we really focused on what we could get the audience to do. Whereas everyone else was just focusing on, let's put a nice webinar on, which is great, but, take it or leave it. Whereas if you're on one of our experience, it was just, let's get that human element out. Let's give people opportunity to get involved, get excited, put in what they want and really get sort of emotionally involved. And I think on the virtual side of things, that was a massive shift for us, and I say why we were so successful. And I think, again, just echoing what Vanessa said, now it's coming back to the live events. In terms of the activities we've been running, there's been a real change in what people are looking for and what they're thinking about when they're putting an event on, rather than just having we get together once a year, we have a finance update, we have a few drinks, and that's it. I think there's so much demand now for activities where there's either the one team, one goal focus. So we've been doing like a big samba drumming event. We've had 300 people. We put them in a room. We transform them into one harmonious samba band. And like activities like that are in high demand because it's just bringing those people back together. And another thing Vanessa touched on, that networking side of things, just bringing out that opportunity rather than just putting people into a room and hoping this magic will appear. We've all been locked away for so long, and a lot of people have lost those social skills. So we've seen a real trend in people looking for activities where people are sort of slowly encouraged to interact, and we build on that. And it's just having almost a fun activity, a shared positive experience, just to get that conversation started. And that's where I say that the trends seem to be going this year. Rather than just a get together, it's what can we get out of it? How can we reconnect these teams? Or how can we introduce teams to each other? They may have been working together for 18 months. They've never met. and have that shared positive experience. So that's the way we've seen it coming from the introducing events perspective.
I'd love to just chuck a couple of little thoughts in there on that piece you said about people have slightly lost the social skills. And I'm broad brushing there, obviously. But I recall being at an event not long ago, and a guy, he also runs a podcast. He's so effervescent. He's like complete life and soul of the podcast and anything he does online. And I happened to be at the event with him. It was his first in-person event. And he said to me, I don't know what to do. I'm completely out of my comfort zone right now. And I haven't done this for so long. I just feel quite overwhelmed. And I think for that, coming from someone who hosts effectively online experiences, events on a regular basis, to feel like that going back in person, I'm sure the second, third, fourth events, he probably didn't just suddenly feel back to his normal self either. And I think we're on a real journey with attendees who are looking to probably enjoy themselves as much as they can and aren't 100% sure quite how to do that. And I love what you said about what can we do? What can we get these attendees to do? And I have a perception, and I think this is a bit of a trend as well, actually, which is why I'm sort of butting in to say it, that there's real concern about how will we look if we try and orchestrate some sort of experience or engagement activity, and how will it be perceived, and will it be perceived badly? And we sort of minimize the event experience sometimes for worrying about how it might be perceived and received. And I mean, I've done some stuff in the past that I was terrified about doing before we actually did it during the live events. I remember doing speed networking for the first time in probably about 2008 or something. And genuinely, for the half an hour before, I was just like, this is going to be a disaster. This is going to be a disaster, but we're going to do it. And I remember one of the team members looking at me and saying, I'm really not sure you're going to pull this off. But we did it. And the attendees said it was one of the best bits of the entire event, because we took the leap of faith and we did something pretty wacky. It was totally organised chaos, but it was organised and the chaos worked. But if we hadn't had the courage to do it, it just would have been another regular networking break that would have been entirely forgettable. So I just think this point of what can we get attendees to do for their benefit, I think that's really important, not for the sake of it, is quite an overwhelming concept at the moment, especially when event organisers are pretty exhausted after the last period of time. So I think there's a lot more we can do there. We've just got to, focus on doing one or two things and doing them really, really well.
I think just to sorry to jump in again. I think just to touch on what Vanessa's just said there, like that thing where people are like, you're nervous about it. It's something new. It's something exciting. That for me is what creates an experience. That is the difference between an event and an experience. It's the nerves. It's the excitement. It's the exactly anticipation, and just that moment of almost a bit of dread. You think, what are the most amazing things that anybody's done as an experience in their life? I jumped out an aeroplane. It's not, I went to the shops and bought some food. You know what I mean? It's the ones that are initially you're sort of terrified of just for that split second. But then when it happens, that's when, that's the experience, that's the emotion you're going to be left with. And I think that's going to be the power of events. And that's what's going to get people talking, as opposed to just, you go, you get the run of the mill, you get your finance update, you go home. So, really pleased that you're pushing exciting things out there, Vanessa, as well.
Totally. And very rarely do amazing things happen by accident or by doing the same thing you did before, right? Usually amazing things happen after a massive amount of effort and that sort of fear factor and anticipation and nervousness on the way in. So I think if you're not feeling enough of that in the preparation for your engagement and experiences, you might not be pushing yourself quite far enough. That's my thoughts.
I love those thoughts, and I completely agree. First of all, so many amazing insights here. I think we touched on experience, humanizing, really pushing yourself to the boundaries. And I feel like the past 2 years, not mentioning the P word, obviously, but kind of pushed a lot of event organizers that were very much pushing from their comfort zone to feel that fear, feel that anxiousness, and actually think of ways outside of the box that they used before. And I feel like that's happening a lot. Is that something you also notice, Simon?
I think so, yeah. And I think there's a big push for now virtual is such a big part of the event spectrum as well. It's also just thinking about, again, going back to what Vanessa said, as well as of what is, the purpose of the event, what's the outcome of it, what's the significance of it, and whether we do things live or whether we do things virtual now. And I think there's a real push of, thought around sort of big, what's the why? Why do we want to actually get together in person, virtually? And I think that'll be a big thing moving forward of this year. I know we discussed as this big push to get us all back together. But then, I sort of said on another podcast a few months ago that I kind of feel this year will be, the get back together year. And then next year, I feel, as sad as it is, the accountants might pull the purse strings a bit and go, look how much these live in-person events cost us. And, it's like, we, rather than getting together 6 times a year like we've always historically done, do we split that down to 3 and 3, go 3 virtual, 3 in person, or do we just do one huge one in person and do the rest? And again, I don't know, it's from the delegate perspective as well. Do people want to come to live and in-person events anymore? That whole losing the social skills. You've also got the stress of travel. You've got to find shoes to put on. You can't just turn your laptop anymore and turn up in 50% dress, as many people have been doing. It's that whole emotional thing of how many events do people actually want to go to. So it's interesting times for events at the moment and event planners. And there's a lot of thoughts on getting the right strategy. I think there's quite a lot of pressure on that moving forward.
Yeah, great point. Sorry, I
absolutely agree. No problem. I love it actually that you have such a lively conversation. Makes my job easier as well. But no, really,
massively agree with what Simon said about the costs of these events, and I think it's great. Like, let's get back together right now, right? We need it. We need to reconnect. But what I think it's also going to teach us, when I say we need it, I think it's also going to teach us, or enlighten us perhaps a little more, on what we genuinely should be doing in person and what we actually, I'm going to say should do online as well. And what's the blend of in between too? Because I think we're still always being quite black and white. Is it online or is it in person? And actually there are greys in between that. But the other piece that I think is quite an important, not today, piece of the puzzle, but is going to become more important in coming years, is the carbon cost as well as the financial cost of going to these events. So there was some research published in Nature Journal this week, and the carbon footprint of the event industry in this research piece was attributed for being 10% of the global carbon footprint from the events industry. Now, that blew my mind, and I don't think we're going to be able to ignore that for much longer, to be honest. So when it comes back to engagement and experiences, I think this is where we're going to have to really test ourselves to, can I deliver the outcome of whatever it is I'm trying to achieve? And can I engage people and give them a great experience in whatever this particular, I'm going to use the word event for ease, or meeting, in the in-person experience, in the virtual experience. And I think there's going to be an increasing amount of questions about that from probably Q1-ish next year, when the financials for 2022 get closed out and costs start to be analysed. I think it'll be very financial cost driven to start with. And I also think there is a huge push to go back in person from the event organisers, not always from the attendees. So some more research more recently. I love stats and facts, by the way. I sort of feel like when things are crazy, which, let's be honest, been pretty crazy in the event sector in the last couple of years, you stats give you something solid to work with. And we also have had a period of time where we haven't had much in the way of trends, because we've just been on this roller coaster of changeability. So Freeman publishing some data that shows that in-person event attendance at the moment is about 64% compared to, oh my goodness, I'm going to say 2019 and before, still avoiding the P word. And Skift meetings have also published similar sorts of findings. They said around about, I think they said 60 to 65%. Sorry if I haven't got that exactly right. So that's a big old chunk. We're talking 35%. What's happening to those attendees, and how are we creating awesome experiences for them to keep them engaged in different ways? And I'm really fascinated to see over the next 2 years what we do to keep pushing this experience level, because no one wants to stand still, right? We always want to keep moving forwards and learning and growing in both in person and online, and bring the two together. And I'm excited to see where we end up, because it's not going to be a straight path, I'm sure. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of zigzags to get there.
Absolutely. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but I think the main trend is still going to be up. So in that sense, a future to looking forward to. I hear a lot of these trends, and I was wondering, can you share some real life examples of what you're currently doing, like an experience you've gotten to organize for your attendees? How are you currently, for instance, the first topic was humanizing that aspect. Can you give a real life example of that, Vanessa?
I've got loads. I'll try and keep it really short. So about a year ago, I was involved in a hybrid event. It was multi-hub. And one of the audiences was in New York. One was in London, and then a big load of people online as well. And we did something for each of those audiences independently that was shared with all of the other audience too. So, for example, the New York crew had breakfast at Tiffany's, where underneath all their chairs was a little blue box, and in one of them there was a Tiffany's necklace. So we live streaming in both directions. All of the New York attendees were like, what, looking under their chairs. One of them won, and it was all live streamed to both those in London who could see this happening. We're like, oh, this is cool. I want this. The London crew at the end of the day got, there was like a champagne giveaway, because the time zones meant that champagne for breakfast probably wasn't quite the business effect we were going for, but it was at the end of the day for the London crew. Some other cool things I've seen in person, Money 2020. I loved what they did here. They had every attendee arrived on the stage, and they didn't know that before they were arriving. So the entrance, the registration, then fed them through, where they walked into the conference room via the stage. There were photos of them standing on the stage. I thought it looked awesome. Pulse is a really quite significant customer success event, which is very US centric. They've been online, obviously, for the last couple of years, and they had an in-person and a virtual element this year. They did it so well together. And the most attended session that they had was called Puppies of Pulse, where they literally invited all of the attendees to share photographs of their dogs or something like that. And having spoken to the Pulse organisers, she said last year it flew. This year they put it on their homepage for the event because it was such a success last year. And this is a business event, right? Times have changed. And I just think there's such great examples that bring to life that you can make these experiences, even when they are, the content might be pretty serious and might be all about compliance or something, but you can still bring the human element to these experiences, both in person and online. Sorry, I'm going to stop talking for a bit now.
No problem. I really love those examples. I think they're very good examples. Simon, can you share some of your real life experiences?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say, having the delegates arrive on stage, I will be stealing that.
So
for
good,
events,
isn't it? So
I
want to.
I love that
it.
as a concept.
Yeah.
It's a simple thing, but bang, you are the
Yeah.
stars of the show. You know what I mean? And that's what we really sort of aspire to do with all our experiences. We make it about
Exactly
the delegates,
that.
and you are the people that matters. This is for you. It's all about you. And love that. So I'll be stealing that one. Write that one down for later. But other sort of examples of things we've been doing. We had. There does seem to be that we're finding a lot of teams at the moment who are very new, or as I say, they've been working together for the past few months. They've never actually met in person, or there's been company restructures, people working differently from home a lot of the time. And there's a real importance at the minute of when people do get together in a room that we give them that shared positive experience. And we did an event a few weeks ago for a company, and they've had about 6 or 7 brand new teams. They just put them all together, and they really wanted them to focus on company values, but they wanted it to be fun. So rather than just saying like, we're having 2 hours, sit around a table, meet your team for the first time, have that discussion, and then tell us about what you're going to do as a team. They said, right, come on, we want something fun. What can we do? So we went in and I briefed them as if they had to come up with an entire new marketing campaign. We were meant to have some advertising industry awards for the advertising movie industry. We were going to show you some adverts. We lost all the footage. So they had 2 hours to recreate like a team advert each. So we gave them fancy dress, we gave them budgets, we gave them props. We're in some beautiful hotel with that randomly had fully sort of themed rooms. Every room was completely different. So the venue worked perfectly, but it was, we gave them about an hour and a half of just having fun together. And because they were having fun, they felt a lot more relaxed and so many ideas came out. And then we brought them all back into the room at the end. We put the films up. They made the adverts up on the big screen. They came and did a little presentation about what they were going to do. But rather than just standing there going, we commit to making X percentage by Q4, they were dressed as Superman and, a giant chicken.
I want
and they were
this
so
idea.
excited about, we're going to be doing this for...
I'm going to ask you for
again,
the details. So good.
It is. But just as an experience for them, it became memorable. They just got excited about it. And rather than, as I say, just going in, having that business conversation, having a very sensible thing, it was a very corporate company, but all of a sudden there was big smiles on the faces. And, we had a little award ceremony. We gave out Oscars for the best performances. But we also had a judging panel in front of the stage who were all the senior directors of the company. And I thought they were just going to do it as a bit of fun, but they took about 15 minutes properly analysing everything they'd done. And it really made a difference. And they said they got a lot more from the delegates by doing something fun with it, by taking people out of the norm, shifting that, having that mental shift from this is a work environment. I'm a bit scared to say these things, to just going, do you know what? I'm dressed as a chicken. Whatever comes out of me, comes out. You know what I mean? It just happens. And that just became a memorable experience for them.
There's something about the unexpected. I feel in both the examples we've talked about here, coming out on stage, dressing as a chicken, both of those are really unexpected. And for me, I feel like that's maybe a takeaway for me from this conversation so far, is that actually the unexpected is often what leads to the greatest delight. So think about that. How can you surprise your attendees in a positive manner, obviously? And I bet there are loads of other creative ideas out there. Hundreds and thousands, probably.
It's interesting. Sorry to jump in, Maureen, but it's interesting you should say just about the surprise there, Vanessa, because we, with all our virtual experiences, take the game show that we run, for example, we very much focused on give people exactly what they expect to happen. When I say game show, you're expecting a quiz. So round number 1 is a quiz. Round number 2, bang, absolutely hit them with the most ridiculous, off the wall, like just what is going on this event. And it just totally they don't have to get involved with it, they can just watch it. But we did something, I won't say exactly what we did because it'll sound bizarre, it is ridiculous, but it worked. You saw this confusion going over people's face, and then afterwards they thought, I can relax here. We can have fun with this. This isn't just another work conference. This is where the fun happens. And you get so much more by sort of introducing people. They're in the comfort zone. They know what they want. And then all of a sudden, bang, you hit them with something and they just go, oh. And after that, it's very easy then to sort of take people down whatever route you want. And I found you get a lot more out of people, to the point of, people think they're coming online for a virtual quiz, and I've got a nice lady in Spain jumping in a swimming pool with all her clothes on for no other reason other than she thought she'd get some, and it's just that. But if I just said, right, go and jump in your swimming pool, it would be no. Yeah. But it's just that, thinking about the psychology of it, building people up, giving them that surprise, giving them the unexpected, and then giving people opportunities to interact and engage. And I think, that's been our sort of success model, if you like, for all our virtual experiences.
I guess this element, you sometimes do have to lead by example a bit as the person delivering the event. So you just made me think, we run quarterly, we run the Noteworthies, we call it, where it's basically an awards ceremony where we make note and share and publicly celebrate. It's usually around 10 or 12 of our employees across the globe. And it's a huge town hall on our platform, which makes it nice and easy for us. And everybody comes together to get going. And at the beginning, there are usually a few people whose job is to just get that morale and that camaraderie going. It takes less than a minute, and before you know it, the screen's covered in emojis and there's amazing chat going on in the chat discussion. And I think when you are doing it for a group of individuals who perhaps don't know so well, I'm talking about we're doing this with our peers and our colleagues, when it's a group you don't know so well, you might have to be that catalyst at the beginning. You might have to be the fire starter that gets us going, and that's okay. And I think, again, sometimes people worry, can I do that? Is that allowed? Yes, it absolutely is. All you're doing is just getting things going. So yeah, go for it. Jump in a pool with your clothes on if that's what is required.
Without the fire starter, there would never be a fire, right?
Exactly.
What an amazing takeaways already, indeed. I think we kind of already went to the next topic, which is share a funny story or a horror story that you actually experienced. I already heard a lot of funny stories here, but maybe Simon, you can share a funny or a horror story that you experienced with experience and engagement in events.
So I'm going to stick with more of the funny rather than the horror, because I try to stay away from the horror where possible. You know, we've all had those events. There's all the unpredictable things, but I like to stick with the positives. So one that, you know, I sort of mention when people say, tell me about an interesting event or experience you've run. A few years ago, a client came to the company I was working for and said, we've got Colin Jackson, which, if you've not heard of Colin Jackson, he's a British Olympian, world record breaking hurdler. He presents on the BBC now. He was going to come in and be the motivational speaker for the team. And then they said, after he's come on, we want to do some kind of activity for a couple of hours in the afternoon. We've got 200 or 300 people. What can you do? And rather than just going motivational speaker, coffee break, then an activity, we said, well, how can we integrate your speaker into the activity? So what we did is we came up with a murder mystery concept, but we actually did, rather than a murder, we did a theft. So the plan was to steal Sir Colin Jackson, CBE's Olympic medals. So I had never met the guy before. I had to jump on a conference call before the event with two very professional ladies who seemed to turn into giggling schoolgirls on the phone to Colin Jackson. And I had to go, Colin, are you going to bring your Olympic medals along with you? And he said, yes, why? And I was like, would you mind if we stole them? Cue silence and tumbleweed moment. And then I explained what was going on. He got very much into it. So the plan became, actually, on the event, he did his 45 minutes to an hour. He had a couple of Q&As. And then just during his last question, I went on dressed as head of security. And I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson, we're going to have to cut this short. I'm afraid your Olympic medals have just been stolen. He looked mortified, looked up at the audience and said, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go. I've just found out my Olympic medals have been stolen. 200 and odd people just gasped. There was just this, I marched him out the room. There was devastation in the room. We got out into the corridor, burst into fits of laughter, high-fived all the way up to the corridor. And then people came out the room. We said, like, somebody else went on and said, we're going to a coffee break now. Make your way out the room. We're going to have to see what's happened with Colin. They went out. There was blue lights flashing, sirens going on, police everywhere. And then they went, oh, and that just invested people into what became an experience. So rather than just having it as a structured day and splitting everything up, just really sort of bringing everything together and giving people that, when we got that 200 odd people just going all at the same time, we knew that was going to be an experience for them rather than just an activity, if you like, or an event.
I can imagine you must have had a good laugh behind the scenes with that.
I have to say, if anyone's thinking about booking Colin Jackson, he is brilliant. Rather than a lot of speakers who say, look, I've done 20 minutes, the phone goes off, they walk out the room, get in a car and go on to the next one. Colin said, can I stay around and see if you get my medals back? He was fingerprinting with people. He was watching CCTV evidence, taking selfies. He was brilliant, but absolutely just as a bit of a surreal experience for the people, because he got involved with it as well. Yeah, brilliant day.
Love it. How is that for you, Vanessa? Can you share a funny or maybe a horror story that you experienced?
To a certain extent, segues in, actually. So I also think it's worth thinking. I I am head of customer engagement here at Notified. I'm obsessed with making customers happy. And actually with events, you have got attendees, possibly sponsors as well. But your speakers, I think you should think about your speakers as customers. So, Simon, what you did there for Sir Colin was you gave him an experience, right? You made his job as a speaker way more fun that day. And he probably told his friends and family, I had this really great gig the other day. And I think that is a really nice way to think about. Think of your speakers as customers too. Make sure they have an amazing experience, and they're going to then give your attendees an amazing experience. So mine is a bit of a horror story, actually, about a speaker, which is why I say it's a nice segue in. And this is what happens when you don't take real ownership of your agenda. So this is personal experience, quite a long time ago now, over 10 years, maybe 12 or 13. And there was a period of time where the events, the conferences that I was running, we were receiving a huge amount of sponsorship from mostly technology companies to pay to stand on the stage and speak. And in our, I guess, eagerness to satisfy those customers who were paying pretty big dollar to have the privilege to speak on the stage, that we didn't take enough ownership over the agenda, and we didn't basically instruct them clearly enough on what to do or particularly not to do on stage. And it damaged the quality of the agenda because they were just being a bit too pitchy. And long story short, the thing where I really realized, this is not an engaging experience, and we then took huge steps to resolve this, was clearing some of the tables after the main keynote speaker, who was a paying sponsor. And there was one note that one delegate had written to another delegate that said, I have no idea what he's talking about, do you? ? And someone had replied, no idea. And I thought, we've got this wrong. We've really, really got this wrong. And we obviously got pretty fair feedback from some of the attendees that it was, the rest of the sessions were great, but those sponsored sessions were disappointing. So the next year, we didn't let a single sponsor go on the stage. It caused, frankly, a riot. We took a hit on revenue that year, but the following year, we had completely regained control. We'd earned back the respect of the attendees, who felt a little bit violated, I think, the year where they got pitched a lot. So we earned back their respect. We also earned back the respect of the sponsors, and it gave us that like total reset, totally retake control of that agenda and what was happening on the stage, so that it was engaging. So it was a horror story at the time. As I've explained it was a 2-year recovery window, but it 100% paid off, and then it actually turned out to be far more lucrative after that. But yeah, seeing that note, that one hurt. That really hurt when you have that realization that you got it wrong. And I think it's important to share a little bit of horror, especially when it's lived horror, as well as the positivity. But yeah, think of your speakers as customers. And he probably, that particular presenter, had we given him way more guidance, he probably actually would have really appreciated it, because it would have helped make his session more successful. So it's that thing again. Don't worry about what people think of you making your event a success. Just do it.
Absolutely. A horror story, but with a beautiful learning, I think, and you only got out stronger, so that's still a positive thing. Would love to hear, like, a last point, your takeaway, maybe from this session or maybe in general, like what is for you the most important thing to keep in mind for event professionals right now?
This was quite an easy one, actually. Make sure that you are giving your attendees the options that they are truly asking you for right now. So what I mean by that is, don't be clouded by, I think, Simon, you said, sort of rush back to in person. Think about what you're trying to achieve. Think about the goals. Think about your attendees' goals as well. Then deliver accordingly. And if that's a combination of in-person, online, if it's all in person, if it's all online, whatever is the right delivery mechanism, I think right now is incredibly important. And then you build your engagement and your experience design around those overall goals of both the attendees and yourself. And that's my fear at the moment is that the event organizers are pushing too much, or not too much, perhaps more than the attendees are pushing, just based on those stats. The attendees aren't going back so much. So think about it from your attendees' perspective as well as your own, and then provide the right delivery mechanism.
Love it. Such a great key takeaway. And how is that for you, Simon?
I very much agree with Vanessa. I've got a very sort of similar, that one key message to take away. Like Vanessa said, there's this huge push. We must get back together. People are desperate to get back together, and I fully understand that. But I've seen a lot of people over the years do in-person events quite badly. They've been very dull, very boring. People don't enjoy them. I've then seen them switch to virtual, and they've taken the exact same format and put it on the internet, which makes it about 10 times worse, even more boring. And don't rush to get people back together and then give them a terrible experience. Keep it light. As I mentioned about, people's sort of social skills have weakened slightly. Don't just throw people back into 8 hours of death by PowerPoint. We're all excited. We get into a room, we turn the lights down, and 8 hours of presentations. You go home. Make it a shared positive experience. And I think that for me has been, our sort of mantra through lockdown and online is, keep everything positive. Make sure when you do bring people together, give it real purpose, make it fun, and make people want to come back together. There's a lot of companies at the minute who've got teams. They just feel distance. They haven't got the trust. They work with people online, but they don't have that, solid, real sort of bonds with them. Give them an opportunity to create those bonds, make real relationships, make real connections in person, and make it, that people want to actually be part of that team. So really have a think about what you're going to do, your strategy, what activities are you going to do to make it an enjoyable and positive experience.
I couldn't agree more. Such great takeaways. I think our listeners have gotten a lot of value out of this episode. I want to thank you, Simon and Vanessa, both so much for being here. It was really a pleasure to have you as guests on the Event Effect. For all the listeners, looking forward to seeing you in the second episode. For now, I wish you a very pleasant day and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.